Sometimes when moving objects in Unity, it can be confusing to work between local and world space. In world space, the directions are static. You can see by the gizmo in the corner of the scene view which direction in the world is Z, which direction is X, and likewise Y. But this will differ between that and the actual objects you have in your scene. So for example, this mocked up penguin made of cubes and spheres that I've made over here is facing this way. So his Z is pointing in that direction, whilst the world Z is pointing across there. So how can we deal with this? Well, in this example, I have a script attached to him called translator, which I've just used to make him move forward. So in this example, I've said transform.translate vector3, 0 in x, 0 in y, 1 in z axis, and I've timed it by time to make it happen a bit slower. So if I just press play, he's moving forward down his z axis. So why doesn't this work for rigid body objects? Well, we need to tell that particular object which direction to face. So to go back to that script again, what you'll see is if we disable this line of code by putting // in, and instead say rigid body dot add force vector3 0 0, let's say 100, takes a bit more to move a rigid body with a force. So what is that going to do? Well, presumably that will do exactly the same thing, right? Well, actually it doesn't. Let's have a look at it. So first of all, I'm addressing a rigid body, so I'll have to add a rigid body to that object, and I'm just going to untick use gravity so that it doesn't fall down. And if I press play, what it does is fly off presumably in its own x-axis, but that isn't actually what's happening. Actually, it's moving in world Z. Now we can combat that, and this is quite a useful way of doing it, by grabbing the transform's forward direction. So using the forward direction of that specific object to move it. So what we usually tend to do in order to do that is to place it into a variable first. So we'll say var forward is equal to transform.forward. And if I'm going to use it to move something, I might want to multiply it by a certain amount, and equally I could make a variable for that at the top, but it's just an example. So instead of vector3 and those values, I'm going to pass in FWD. So now it's going to use transforms forward as a direction and move that object forward. Okay, so that's just the basic difference between local and world space. So if you think something isn't moving in the correct direction, check that you've referenced the objects forward rather than the world forward first.